Good morning, everyone. I hope you are doing well. Hopefully the last week has treated you well and that you are having a good time. I, for one, had a interesting week. It was a frustrating one for the first couple of days, and I'll get to the details on why at the end of this stream. I think I'm going to save the less interesting stuff for the end. But in general, it's good. Progress is coming along nicely, and I'm excited to share it with you. So, I've recently modified my desk setup, and I'll probably show this at some point a bit later as well. But I may be kind of looking all over the place because I just need to get used to it, especially for streaming. It's a little bit different. Anyway, let's get into it. So the first thing I want to talk about this week is that Jugglebot is going to be big. And by this, I mean that the scope of this project is very, very large. This is something that I've known since the very beginning of the project and is something that I haven't really explicitly talked about too much. But the reason why I'm bringing this up now is because I've had a few people over the last couple weeks or months be asking if they can help out with different things, like wanting to make different images for different things, or like GIFs for like funny things on the Zulip page, on the Zulip site, or different things to like actually help out a bit more directly with like the development of Jugglebot itself. And I just want to go out and say explicitly that yes, I am very, very, very happy for other people to help out with this stuff. This project is huge, and this would take me a very long time to complete, if it can ever really truly be complete, on my own. And so if you want to help, please do. If there's any area of this where you think, that's kind of cool, I think that I could help out with that, and if you want to, then do it. If you need anything from me, then just ask. If you want me to give you some like CAD files or I don't know, images of different things or whatever, just ask me, and I'm more than happy to facilitate you in helping me. I have completely come to terms with the fact that at some point this project is going to involve other people, and I figure that now is just as good a time as any other time to start introducing other people into it. So yeah, if you want to help, then do. If you want to get some ideas of things where you can help out, if you go on Zulip, there's a sub-projects stream. So if you look on like the left-hand side of the window, you'll see a stream there called sub-projects. That's where I've just put some things that will be useful for the project that are not really necessary right now, but they will probably come into play a little bit later down the line. I was having a flick through these the other day, and I've realized that some of these are very theoretical and don't actually really matter too much for the project itself. But still, if you want to get a vague idea of kind of where the project is heading, then have a look there. But if you want to help out with more direct things, then just ask me. Because to be honest, while I'm working through all of this, I have zero expectation that anyone else is going to be doing anything with me on this. And so I never have planned anything out to figure out a way to like divvy it up between other people. I have zero clue how to manage a project like this with sharing it with other people. So this will be a learning experience for both of us, assuming you haven't done something like this before as well. One thing though that I do think would be very cool and I would really like to use, and I've considered making it myself, but I just haven't had the time to, is something to put on these streams where when the stream is about to start, it can be like a countdown sort of thing of like stream is going to start in however long it is until the stream actually starts. I know that you can set these things up in OBS pretty well and you can just have it like displayed there, and it seems like that would be a lot nicer, especially because there's a bit of lag between when I actually say something and when you guys receive it, and it makes starting the stream a little bit weird. I've now gone to just like showing just this screen on the front page of my PowerPoint, but I don't know, a cool little like loading screen would be really cool. So if you want to make something like that, then I will be all for it, and I will very, very happily use it if you do happen to make it. But yeah, again, literally anything in this project, if you want to help, please do. There are so many avenues to go down in this project, and yeah, it would take a long time for me to do them all by myself. But I will eventually, so no pressure. Don't need to feel obliged to help out. And okay, so there's one thing that I want to cover from last week that two people asked about in the comments after the stream, which is that what's the deal with the overspeed errors? So right now, when the robot shuts down, it lowers the robot down to its lowest position and then puts all of the motors into what's called idle, where they can just be like moved around freely. And what is going on there is that I'm telling the motors to go into a very slow speed, lower all the way down, and then once the motors have registered as having stopped moving, then put all of the motors into idle. I think what's happening here is that I am not able to tell when the motors have actually stopped or not. So they'll go down, and then before they've actually stopped, something in the software goes, "Hey, yeah, cool, they've all stopped," while they're actually still moving. And then once I try to put them into idle, then they all, well, at least one of them like freaks out because it's like, "Oh, you shouldn't be moving at all, and you are moving, so something's going wrong." I don't know what's going on there. I've tried for quite a while to get that, like the check if the motors have actually stopped or not to work, and I just can't get it to work. It's really frustrating. There's a couple different ways of doing this in ODrive. Like you can check the motors themselves, you can check the encoders, and there's actually a flag when you're using trapezoidal trajectory mode to tell if the motors have stopped, like if that trajectory has ended, but that doesn't work. I don't know what's going on there. Either way, it's not too big of an issue because it only really happens when I'm shutting the Jugglebot off, like I'm ending my session, which usually means I'm like done for a little while. So having those errors kind of floating around afterwards is not too bad. It would be nice if I could fix it, but yeah. Also, to address something that the two people asked about, it does. I hadn't played around with this much before, but since you guys mentioned it, I have tried turning the robot off from different heights. So like I'll go in the space mouse control and lower it all the way down and then turn it off. And every time I've lowered it all the way down and then turned it off, it hasn't come up with this error. I don't know. I think that's partly though because it doesn't really need to move. If it's all the way down already, it doesn't need to move at all, so it's already finished. I don't know. Either way, not too big of an issue. So I have some progress on the UI to show you all. The first thing is that last week I mentioned that I wanted to move the topic statistics. So I have this, if I show you my UI, I have this thing up here, and I'll show you this more properly in a sec. But I've got this thing up here that shows me all of the topics on the ROS network and various statistics about them. It's just like the network's off right now, so it's not showing anything. And these statistics are all being collected in the browser itself. So it's basically subscribing to all of the topics and then using those subscriptions, figuring out all the stats. And that introduces a bit of lag because it means that the values that I see are after the browser has already done all of its stuff. And that means that there's a bit of like that browser, the time that it takes the browser to do those computations adds to these statistics essentially. And that's obviously not ideal. So it's not a true reflection of what's actually going on. And so last week I said that I wanted to change this around so that I was getting these statistics straight from the ROS network itself. And there is a way to do this, but it's pretty annoying to do as far as I'm aware. So I've had a good chat with ChatGPT about how to do this. And the best thing that it/we have come up with is to activate what's called topic statistics in the quality of service settings. So every time you have a topic in ROS, you can set this what's called a QoS profile, and this basically sets how you want that message to be handled, well, how you want that topic to be handled. And one of the things here is this topic statistics policy. And I haven't actually tried this yet, so grain of salt. But from what I can tell, this will create a new topic that will publish all of the statistics about that first topic. And this is cool because it means that I'll have all of the statistics straight from ROS, but it means that I'll have to double, like for every topic that I want to monitor, I have to have a new topic that publishes the statistics on the first topic. So if I want to monitor every single topic, I've got like 10 or 12 or whatever, maybe something like that. I'm going to have another 10 just to handle the statistics. And I could just monitor the most important ones and only have like maybe 3 or 4 topics being monitored, but I kind of want to have all of them just because this has actually been tremendously useful for debugging everything and to like see what nodes are working and what nodes aren't working based on what's being published. So I would like to do all of them, and this feels a bit over the top, a bit overkill. And after having thought about this, I realized that a little bit of lag is not too bad. So in case you're curious, I went to all the effort to set up the node that would subscribe to all of these statistics topics. So it would be receiving all of the statistics. It would then aggregate all those statistics into nice little, like a format to fit into my UI here. And it did all of that. And I went to all that effort, and then after I had it done and I was just about to go into all of the topics to start this QoS profile thing, I realized that this is going to create a lot of baggage in my system, and I don't really want to, it feels a bit overcomplicated. So I do have a node in the GitHub. You can find a node there that it does all the statistics thing. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it is there. It's just not active and I'm not using it. So yeah, I don't know. If you have any thoughts on this, I'm interested, but yeah, I'm not too upset with a little bit of lag now that I think about it a bit more. Cool. Okay, now I want to show you a demo, and this is something that I've only done once, that I did last night about 12 hours ago, so we will see if it works. Let me go, I'll show you this screen. Actually, let's do this one. All right, so again, I've got to turn the robot on, and I have to help it out so that it can find its... Actually, I'll show you the robot. Because I've done something that I think is very cool, very nice for the project as a whole. I would love if there's a way to not have to do that. If there's a way, let me put the camera back. If there's some way in the ODrive firmware to set it to only move in one direction when it's doing that index search pulse, that would be beautiful, because that means I could just have it down. When I turn it on, they would all raise to do the index search rather than just going any random direction, and it would be great. But I don't know how to do that. If anyone does, please. All right. Okay, so I need to fix up this view because this is a bit cooked. You might notice, if you've been paying attention last week, there's a new section in here in the UI, and it's very cool. So actually, that's why I'm setting this up, and I can explain. Last week, I also said that I was trying to change my launch process, that I could launch my ROSbridge WebSocket at the same time as the rest of my ROS network. And I tried that a lot, and it led to lots of issues, but I will describe those a bit later, because that's where we get a bit in the weeds. All right, so we can home the robot. And maybe while that's going, I can change my camera view so that you... Where do we want this? Maybe up here. How's that? All right. So the robot is homed. This is all the same as normal. We get all our stats. So some of these stats are not posting because they haven't, like nothing has happened on them yet. And let's try, first off, same as last time, we can do space mouse control. Let me change the view. So I can control this with my space mouse, same as before. But the cool thing now is that I can do this pattern control. And I'm a little bit nervous right now because I don't know if this is going to work or not, but let's have a look. Yes, so now it follows a pattern that I have prescribed. And the even cooler thing is that I can change how the pattern behaves dynamically. I realized last night when I first tried this out that I need to fix these numbers up, because these numbers in these sliders are not actually the default values, which is a little bit strange. But I can change those values in here, so I can change how quickly this pattern is being followed. And I can change, let's change the radius up a bit. And so what this pattern is actually doing right now is that it's tracing out a cone where there's a point up the top where it's completely stationary. It's all like rotating about that point and always facing that point. So let's make it go a little bit faster. And if we decrease the cone height, then it gets a lot more obvious what's going on. But I'm a little bit worried because I haven't pushed this too hard yet. I've only tried this once, and yeah, I don't want to break anything. But yeah, this is very big. So this may not seem like a big development, but this means that I can control the robot by giving it a pattern, and it will follow that pattern. Up until this point, up until about 12 hours ago, I have only been able to control it with this space mouse control, where I just give it a command with the space mouse, and it follows that command. So this is very big, because this means that I can send it commands like juggling patterns, and it should be able to follow those patterns. So let's find out. Let's try. Actually, I'll leave it up, and let's try going from the highest position and ending the session. No errors that time. No overspeed. Who knows what's going on there? Cool. So I think that is big. This is the first time I've been able to actually send a list of points to go to, and it can actually go to them. And I really like that. And I want to describe just quickly now how this is actually working. So if I go back to here, I want to show you what's actually going on here, because this is pretty important for how I'm going to be controlling Jugglebot moving forward. So what this is doing, this might seem a bit weird, by the way. The way that I've approached this might seem a bit weird, but just hear me out, and then at the very end I'll explain why I've done it like this. I just need water first. So the first thing that's going on in Pattern Creator is that we have a function that is called generate whatever description of the pattern you want path. And this creates a list of poses and timestamps. The timestamps are obviously when it should be at that pose. And what this looks like for this version, for this one, for generating a circular path, which is not what we saw just then, but it's something I've written up, but I can't actually access yet because I haven't written the buttons to allow me to access this. But we essentially we create some list of timestamps. And the way that I've done this for the circle path, so this one on the screen now, and also the one that I was just showing then, is that we have one cycle is one set of points. So we just generate a bunch of timestamps until we get to the end of the path, and then we fill in all of the poses that match up to those timestamps, so that we will complete, in this case, one full circle by the time that the time has ended. And we add this to a list. So we will have a list where we've got, in the first index, we've got all the poses. So these are 6 degrees of freedom pose, well, up to 6. And then we've got a bunch of timestamps for when we should be at that pose. And then we make that our next path. Let me get rid of this. And then, so once we've got our path, we want to publish the pose. I've done this in one function right now. I think I'll probably split it up into 2 soon, but for now it's just one. And what this is doing is it takes the current time, the actual time that we are at, and checks whether we are still in the current path or if we're in the next path. So if the current path is empty, so nothing's going on, it's just sitting there waiting, then we just hang out, nothing happens. Or if the time now minus the time when we started the current path is greater than the duration of the current path. So if it's 12 seconds right now, we started the path at 8 seconds, and the path was supposed to take 3 seconds, then we're probably done, because the path should have ended a full second ago. If any of those things are true, then we will grab the next path, so-called, and make that the current path. Once we've done that, either way, we have a current path, and we want to find the next point along in that path and then publish that point. So we take the current time that we're at right now, and then we find the next path, the next point in that path according to the timestamps. So we basically look at the timestamps, look at the time that we're at right now, find the next timestamp along, and then publish that pose. This is not really the technically correct way to do it, as far as I can tell. I think it has some advantages, but I think that the better way to do it would probably be to interpolate, because if we are at 13 seconds, and we only know a point for 12 seconds and 14 seconds, we don't know technically, like the code doesn't know where we should actually be at this 13-second point. We only know 12 and 14. So what I'm doing here is I'm just grabbing the 14 one, so I'm always kind of like one ahead. And this seems kind of good because I think the advantages of this is that it might compensate for any sort of lag in the system by always grabbing the point slightly ahead. But yeah, I feel like interpolation is the better way to go, but that would also add lag in carrying out those calculations. So I don't know, pros and cons. I'm just doing this because it works. And if we put both of these together, then we get the full publish pose code or function. And that's it. So we basically make a big list of poses and timestamps and then figure out which of these lists we're in and then find the pose that corresponds to the time that we're in. And the reason why I've set this up like this is because if you have been following this project for a little while, you may remember that my code that deals with the path planning for the actual Jugglebot, it kind of needs to populate the entire path in one hit. It can't just calculate like half of the path. It has to do the whole thing in one go, just because of the way that the Beziers work, as far as I understand them. And so I've followed this approach because it means that I should, hopefully, be able to relatively easily port over my other code, which will populate the entire path in one hit, along with timestamps as well. And I should just be able to copy that straight into here. Hopefully, is the idea. This definitely would have, for making Jugglebot follow just like a circle or like a cone, like what you just saw before, there's definitely easier ways to do that than this, but I was trying to keep in line with what I will be doing with my other code. And I've done the other code that way because I don't know any other way to do it. So I've kind of been limited by that. And this, if you're curious and you want to see more about any of this, it's in the develop branch on GitHub, which is in the link of this video. A link is in the description of this video, and it's at that location. One other thing that I wanted to quickly mention is that last week I mentioned that I would like to be able to disengage the CAN bus like node from the rest of my code so that I can like control the robot without having the actual robot on, so that I can like run simulations and stuff in my UI without actually having the robot itself move. And I've discovered that actually I can just do that. I can just not activate the CAN bus handler node, and the rest of everything else still works, which is very handy and was extremely helpful yesterday in getting that cone movement to work, because there were a couple times when it was absolutely incorrect. And the whole thing, like in the simulation, the whole thing was like inverted and like inside out. And that would have been really bad if I tried to tell the robot to do that. So I'm very thankful that I can test things without actually putting them on the robot and make sure that they're good and then put them on the robot. It's very nice. Okay. Now we are getting into the meat and potatoes. Something is crashing my CAN bus. And I don't know what it is, and it's really frustrating. I don't really know the best way to go through describing this problem, and if you are not technically inclined, then go have a coffee or something, take a little breather. I will be back. There's a couple little things I want to mention right at the very end, but I want to get this out because someone might know something about this, and it would be very helpful if anyone did. So, this all started with me trying to launch my Rosbridge WebSocket in my main launch file, so that way I could only have one launch file and I could show everything that I need to do. Just before I forget, last week I mentioned how I have three things that I need to run to get my UI to work. I need to run HTTP server to be able to like host my web files. I need to run the Rosbridge WebSocket so that those files can communicate with ROS. And then I need to run my normal ROS launch file. Three things. It was kind of annoying to deal with. The first one, the HTTP server, I've just put that as a startup script. So now every time I turn the Jetson on, that just turns on. So that's fine. I don't need to worry about that anymore, leaving me with two. And to be honest, I'm kind of inclined to think that 2 is not that bad and that it's not worth dealing with. But anyway, at one point I was trying to do this and trying to combine the 2 together. And I think this has just shown other problems in my system rather than actually introduced problems. So I think this is reflective of there being a deeper underlying problem. But yes, I was trying to launch the Rosbridge WebSocket in my main launch file so that I only needed to launch one thing. This made me aware of an issue that I had with namespaces, which I didn't even really know was a thing before, but it is apparently fairly important. For anyone who's unaware what a namespace is, I'm probably not going to do a very good job of explaining this, but my understanding is that you can declare where certain like code packages are run and what they have access to. And this namespace kind of sets where that code lives. And I was being not very consistent with how I was doing this. And it meant that I had some topics that, for example, were /jugglebot/topic, and then other topics that were just /topic. And it got to a point where I actually had duplicates of some topics. So one would be a /jugglebot/topic, and the other one would be just /topic, but they were the same thing. And yeah, that was kind of messy. I don't think that had anything to do with the CAN bus crashing. I don't think, but I found out that problem either way. That's fixed now as far as I can tell, but the CAN issue still remains. And I think that this CAN problem is related to traffic on the Jetson. Because setting the log level to debug, which I wanted to do because it means that I can, in my UI, I can click this debug button, and then in my console here, I, in theory, should get all of like debug messages and I can see everything that's going on in my network. But I can't do that now because when I set the log level to debug in my launch file, the CAN bus just crashes. This wasn't happening before. You may remember last week I had that working. The debug thing worked and it was fine. I don't know why. And what I mean by exacerbates the issue here is that when I have the log level set to debug, the CAN bus, what I can do is I can turn the robot on, I can home everything. Homing works reliably pretty much every single time. But then if I go into, say, space mouse control so that the robot lifts up and then starts like responding to what I'm doing on the space mouse, it will lift up and then make this like a thud sound, and then the CAN bus just doesn't respond anymore. There's no more messages being sent. I can't read anything. I can't send anything. It just doesn't work. It's very weird. But if I have the log level not set to debug, then it does seem to work for a time, and then different things kind of crash it. It's really, really annoying. And I think kind of funnily, last week I mentioned how running the command line tools for ROS, like the ROS2 topic pub, blah, 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 is kind of annoying, but actually I haven't really done that much because I haven't needed to. Well, I think that kind of beat me in the ass because I've spent the last like 4 days pretty much exclusively running those commands instead of using launch files to try to understand what's actually going on here. And I just want to show, this is another thing I want to show, but I'll get to that in a sec. I've been using this PowerPoint to keep a record of what I was trying to do. And so we can see here, I don't want to go through this too much, but in case you're curious and you want to try to help out and see what's going wrong with this, these are some of the things that I've tried and what has happened with them. Here is some more. I don't know. Pause the video if you want to help out. I really appreciate it if you would, but I don't want to spend too much time on this because I've just kind of had enough of it, to be honest. But in any event, I have found what seems to be working, and it seems to not cause anything to go wrong, which is to launch the WebSocket in one way and then launch my ROS network another way. That seems to work. The CAN bus seems to be fine. If I try to reboot the O drives, then things kind of stuff up sometimes. It's very temperamental, it seems. I don't know. And I have a feeling that all of this is caused by some underlying issue in my CAN bus handler node or something adjacent to that. But I have no idea what it is. And I've tried a lot of things. I've gotten very familiar with somewhat familiar with the different like CAN debugging tools, but I don't know. I haven't been able to figure out what's actually going wrong here. And the really annoying thing, the reason why this is actually kind of killing me inside a little bit is that I have to do a full reboot of the Jetson every single time this happens. If I just do like the sudo IP link set down CAN 0 and then sudo link IP set up CAN 0, so if I like completely close the CAN bus and then reopen it again, that doesn't fix the problem. Something else is going wrong and I can't figure out, I don't know what's going on. Only a full reboot is a full reboot is the only way that I've been able to reliably fix this issue. And that's really frustrating because obviously I don't want to have to reboot all the time. Anyway, enough of that. What's next? The next thing I want to do is, there's a couple more touch-ups that I want to do to the UI. I mentioned, well, you would have seen if you've been looking at this UI at all really, that there's these jogging buttons and that I have never used them. I don't know how visible this is for you guys. Apologies. Let me make it a bit bigger. That should be better. I've got these jogging buttons here and I've never actually used them because they're not actually connected to anything. They don't do anything right now. And last week I mentioned how I was kind of like umming and ahhing if they're actually relevant or not and if they're actually useful. I'm kind of leaning towards they are useful now. I think that they would be good at a minimum, just as an extra bit of practice for interacting between HTML and ROS. And at a maximum, it would be good for helping to figure out sort of like the limits of the movement of the robot. Because I know like I've got all of the geometry of the robot and I can do all of this in sim, but it's helpful to be able to actually move it around in real life. And it would be cool to kind of like move it into the very far side extremes and see what kind of happens there. And you could say that, yeah, I could do that with the Space Mouse, but I have the Space Mouse inputs clamped to very safe values. I spent quite a while, a couple months ago, sorting out those values so the robot couldn't run into any issues. So I'm inclined to not touch those too much. I think the jogging will be really helpful for kind of just like moving it around. So that's something that I want to do. And another one is to enable different patterns, because as you saw before, I have all of the code in place to get it to just move in a circular pattern, but right now I just have hard coded that if I want to do a pattern control, then it has to be the conical path, which is, in my opinion, the much cooler one, but it would be cool to do other ones. And I've got all this space over here in my UI, so I'm thinking of just put some stuff in there for other buttons for like choosing different pattern modes. And one of those patterns can be to juggle. I realized after last week that I kind of just said like, oh yeah, we can just try juggling, as though it was nothing. And some people out there will probably like, there's a lot of stuff involved before you get to that point. And yes, I agree. However, I already have pretty much all the code to move the robot the way that it should need to move to juggle. Like what you're seeing here is just the best animation that I could find last night, because I swear I have better animations for this, but I can't find where I put them. But I know the paths and the timing and everything that the robot needs to carry out to throw a ball up and catch it again. So now that I can actually control the robot with a pattern and I can give it a list of poses and timestamps and it can follow those and choose the right path at the right time and that sort of thing, now that it can do that, I should just be able to take my code from before, modify it a little bit to fit into ROS, and then it should just work. We'll see. There is one thing that I don't want to do before that though, which is that I need to figure out how to get the robot to go from the current path that it's on to the next path. Because if I just start, for example, if I go between the Space Mouse control and the pattern control, then what happens is it just starts receiving the pattern movement straight away and it will just move straight to whatever the next commanded pose is. And that's a problem. Well, Let me restart that. That's not a problem right now, because right now I have hard-coded all of the velocity and acceleration limits on the robot so that it cannot break itself. I have tried very hard, and I've had lots of people try so far with the Space Mouse to move it around in really janky, fast, erratic ways, but the robot cannot die strictly because those acceleration limits are set so low. But that does mean that the robot cannot go nearly as fast as it actually physically can. So what I want to... So yeah, I need to figure out some way to move from the pose that it's currently in to the start of the next path in a smooth way, so that the software, so that like that, the path planning thing kind of handles all of the fast accelerations and stuff and make sure that the robot doesn't die. And that way I can set the robot acceleration limits to be super, super high. I think what I'll probably do is I'll have some dynamic switching of these limits, because I can interact with these acceleration limits and that sort of thing through my ROS interface. So this means that what will probably end up happening is that I'll be able to click on the Space Mouse button, the acceleration and everything will drop right down to whatever they are right now. I have no idea. And then if I click on like the juggle button, it will bump those acceleration limits right up to whatever they need to be. And then it will hopefully be able to do its thing. Yeah, we'll see. And yeah, this like moving between paths, I think shouldn't be too bad. I think I should just be able to basically say, where am I right now? Where is the start of the next path? Fill that in so the robot doesn't need to move too fast. Maybe that last sentence there was a bit of a was hiding a lot, we'll see, but I don't think it should be too bad. Yeah, okay, that is it for today. One other thing that I wanted to show you, which I'm kind of happy with, is my new setup here, and this cat face is kind of alluding to it. I've recently bought a super ultra wide monitor, which is kind of hard to show, to be honest. And thanks to the ingenuity of hang on, I've got to change this over, of one of my brothers, my background picture is now probably the best background picture I've ever had. Another really cool thing that I don't know if you just saw, but I can have both computers on... this is the wrong one. This is the Jetson right now, and the Jetson cannot handle this screen. It doesn't like it one bit. Come on. But yeah, I've had some people ask me if this monitor is actually useful. And I think wholeheartedly yes. I don't think I will ever see myself going back, especially for like robotics work. Like, look at this. That's so good. Best background ever. I need to go to better photos. This is a bit more high res, but it's so good. All right, now all my windows are fucked up. That was worth it. Yeah, this is actually super useful. Like having the ability to have both computers on the same screen at once, so I can have my Jetson on one screen and then my PC on another screen, is actually so helpful. And I don't need to use this tiny little screen anymore for all of my Jugglebot work. I can use big, full, whatever it is, QHD for my Jetson. It's very good. All right, yeah, that is pretty much it for this week. There was full 2 days of trying to figure out what the heck was going on with the CAN bus, and I still don't really know, but at least I know how to not make it a problem anymore. And yeah, I think the next step is I want to do the jogging. I want to do the different patterns, and then I'm just going to try to add the juggling pattern. And I'm very nervous about this. I've kind of been like low-key putting it off, but we'll see how it goes. Yep. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. I hope you found it interesting. And yeah, if you have any thoughts on any of this, then please let me know. And until the next one, have a good one.